Well, hello again for another episode of REKT Vision. It's Black Friday. I just thought I'd start the show very quickly to talk about Real Vision's Black Friday sale. Um, as is, I guess, tradition, you're going to get 50% off Real Vision membership today, 33% off the digital products, including RV crypto, plus get 30% off the crypto gathering tickets to see OSF in person in January. I may still come as well. That offer ends in a few days, December 2nd. Anyway, although it is, let's say, 2 for 1 or little discounts on most things on Black Friday, Bitcoin is not one of them. We are back. Do you like that, OSF? Do you like that transition?
Very nice, very
We
smooth.
we are on our way to 100K. It feels like another show where I'm expecting Raoul to turn up any moment as we blast through towards the banana zone. Definitely a very, very strong week, although it was a little bit hairy briefly. We went down to about 91K, I think 90K
Yep.
even on some future liquidations, and Solana went all the way back down to like the 220s, and everyone freaked out for a day or so. But now all feels good. Do you think this is finally going to be the elusive big weekend that you've been talking about for a while?
I mean, the stage is set, right? We've had a big flash out of risk. A lot of leverage probably got killed. It's the holiday weekend, it's Friday after Thanksgiving. The stage is, we're coming off a strong macro week as well. The stage is really set for it to be a big weekend. I'm not going to keep my my hopes up because that's what I did for the last 3 weekends and it just never really materialized. So let's see what happens. But yeah, the
It didn't
stage is
just
definitely
didn't
set.
materialize. The market completely nuked every single time you mentioned it. So,
Yeah.
but it does feel like this one. Like we needed to have that little reset, I think, of risk. Back to like 90K. We'd gone pretty much straight line from about 70K to 90K or 99K even, and then back to 90. Feels like we could have another go at 100. I don't know if it'll be another go at 100 and then gets rejected again, and then we hang out around this level for a little bit longer. But it does definitely feel like we're going to have another go over the weekend. And let's see what happens. It has been, like you said, it's been an okay period here for macro as well. Stocks obviously been doing relatively well. The dollar's still a little bit high. The inflation data came in midweek, kind of in line, and but yields have been falling a little bit. They're back down to kind of the levels that they were in October. The 10 years back to 4.2%. So maybe some of that Trump worry that was coming in that would cause inflation has kind of subsided, and we're set up pretty nicely from a macro standpoint. Um, Interestingly, this week was the first week where ETH actually suddenly started to make a move. We had Bitcoin dominance head back down towards 58%. And ETH, like a phoenix, has come back and is hitting 3,600. Normally, ETH rallying has been a very bearish signal for the market, right? ETH rallies, market dumps. ETH rally, and that's what happened the first time it rallied. But now it seems to have all stabilized, and it looks like Bitcoin dominance looks a little bit precarious here. So, out of those three right now, ETH, Sol, Bitcoin, which one do you want to hold, OSF?
ETH feels like one of those things where ceteris paribus, if ETH was at 5K right now, you like that ceteris paribus?
Oh yeah, Econ 101.
Ceteris paribus, if ETH was at 5K right now, I think people would be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it would be a crazy level. If I told you, oh, Solana would be 500 now with Bitcoin 100K, people would be like, oh wow, that's like a big move in Sol. But for ETH, it's like, yeah, it's just, at 5K. Like, it's not just psychologically, it's actually not that much of a hurdle, which is why I think it could happen, because I think ETH could get north of 4K or 4.5K, and people are going to be like, oh man, that was so obvious. Like, why didn't I buy ETH all that time? Or we had to wait a long time for it. So it could happen. The technicals of ETH have obviously been pretty tough this year. The narrative has been certainly been challenged with the rise of Solana and Sui and oversaturation perhaps of L2s. But just takes one big guy to get behind it and start pushing it for the rest of the market to change. Like, market sentiment can change so quickly at like really the snap of a finger. The other thing I would say is, like, you remember, just don't forget there is an ETH ETF out there, and at some point that engine could turn on meaningfully. Like, who knows? But if BlackRock decide to push it very hard and people just think, oh, Bitcoin's done the move now and ETH's started to move, rally, should I buy ETH? Like, I just think all these narratives can literally just change in the space of a day. And if you get the normies onto the ETH idea, then an ETF does exist to push it, which other tokens don't have. So it's been a painful hold for much of this year, but it does feel like things are starting to change. And with Bitcoin dominance falling and people talking about a potential alt season, you would think ETH is like quite nicely placed within that bucket. So let's see. I'm never, just like the whole weekend thing, I'm also not holding my breath on ETH just to avoid disappointment. But I don't even know that much ETH anymore anyway, so I don't know why I'm saying that. But it's more of like a emotional thing. But I do think ETH could come back here. You're muted, by the way.
Yeah, you're right in that ETH ETF inflows actually outpaced Bitcoin inflows for the last 4 days. That's one of the first times we've seen that in a long, long time. The Bitcoin ETF inflows slightly slowed. ETF inflows picked up from a low base. And we had 4 straight days of inflows. So good sign there for ETH. We've also seen stablecoin market cap go up towards all-time highs. It's definitely been a case of money flowing in, and it's not just Bitcoin right now. So a bunch of different altcoins were moving this week. It felt like, to be honest, the biggest movers on the week were a lot of coins that I wouldn't say they were dead, but they were just forgotten. It felt like to a large extent this cycle. So you had coins like Algorand having a big move. Ripple has been probably the strongest out of the top 10 coins. Huge move in coin like that. Some of the older narratives and things like gaming moved, things like Sandbox, which feel like one of the biggest movers on the week. But things like Tia, which was a hot coin earlier this year, but then largely wasn't, and is a bit of a VC coin. So it's those sort of altcoins that people haven't really been, I don't know, touting for the last few months. They were definitely under-owned, and they've bounced from a very low base. If you bring up the chart for any of these coins, it's pretty horrific. What do you think? Do you think that could continue, or do you think that's just a sign of normies coming in and buying the coins that they remembered from last cycle?
That's what I think it is. I think if you're coming back in and you're seeing Bitcoin rally and you've kind of dabbled in crypto before, you're more likely to buy some, and you see the charts as well, actually, and you think, wow, like Bitcoin is all the way at 100K. That's mental. Let me check where all these other like altcoins I used to own are, and you see they're down on the year or unchanged, 60-70% off their highs. You think, oh, well, I'm going to throw some dice on that. I think that's the thought process right now, and I think if you're a normie and you're not already in the meme coin game, or perhaps if you're not like in the Gen Z bucket, and like meme coins aren't your thing, then I think it's easier to just get into alts. I think so. It's not. Yeah, it kind of seems like to me that's perhaps what's happening. Possibly even just like legacy crypto funds as well. Maybe they're just like, now's the time to double down on the stuff. So, do we see
a lot of them would be
continuation of
considered ETH beta coins as well, I think. Like some of these were ETH beta coins. Like a lot of the DeFi coins moved. A lot of the L2s seemed a little bit stronger, or EVM L1s. But what was interesting, like if I read through the top, this is the biggest gainers on the week. If you look at the biggest losers, it's actually a who's who of memes. So it's Popcat, Mog, Loki, Radium, interestingly, Solana, Zero Bro, Ponky, Frog, like all of the mid-cap memes were the worst performers on the week. And it has felt a little bit nervous, I would say, out there in some of those stories. A few of those seem to have been outcompeted by newer things. And I think everyone's looking at that altcoin cycle and being like, oh, are we going to have an altcoin season here, which forgets the memes that I've been buying during this consolidation for the last 9 months?
Yeah. The other thing with memes is there's just like so many new memes that are coming in, like big ones as well. Whereas with alts, I don't know. I think we spoke about this a few weeks ago, didn't we? Where it's like, if you're gonna buy alts, like it maybe might be worth like taking a punt on a few different things that are down like 60, 70, 80, 90%. But I don't know. I still don't own any alts. I still feel comfortable in memes, and I think that will continue. But I do think, I just remember in 2021, you had that period where Bitcoin didn't really move and just everything else was sending like week after week after week as Bitcoin dominance dropped from like 60% to 40%. I don't know if we see that similar of a thing here, because I think Bitcoin has ETS and obviously all the Trump and Bitcoin Reserve stuff. But yeah, we could see stuff, some alts start to perform here, I think.
It's not a small move. Like we've gone from 61.5, it looks like, around the time of the election or the week after, all the way back down to 58. So we've broken what is a long-term trend line support, it looked like, for Bitcoin dominance. It's been the widowmaker to call the end of Bitcoin dominance. And I completely agree with you that I don't think Bitcoin dominance is going down to 50% or less. But it could go to like 55 and then stabilize. And even then, I think that would be a decent spot for markets, wouldn't it?
Yeah, a stabilization around 55% while Bitcoin continues to grind higher, I think would be really good for the rest of the market. Really good for alts, really good for meme coins. Yeah, I think we're heading into just an exciting period for crypto. I mean, everyone's excited and you just see flashes higher and then, consolidation back lower. But that's what we need, I think. We're going to have those periods and hopefully the next high is higher. So, theoretically speaking, this is the move where we should surpass 100K and should start to, I think you'll see another meme coin run here again as well. The last one we had was about 3 weeks ago. You'll see all the stuff higher. But yeah, maybe alts is the interesting place to be in. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not dabbling there because I'm just happy with like my positioning. I don't want to like chop and change stuff and fuck it up, so to speak, in Raul's words. So yeah, happy to let things ride here, I think.
What do you think of this? This was the one thing I saw today, which is true. What we have seen is that global liquidity has gone down in the last few weeks. And that traditionally is at a very, very high correlation with Bitcoin, although Bitcoin slightly lags 12 weeks. Could you imagine a scenario like this? This is kind of what I've been saying, right? Like, I'm going to reduce my risk at the end of the year. And then I think we could go into a bit of a sideways chop. And I was not following it because of this. I was just talking about, like, generally when I see these sort of really hypey periods in crypto, they last for like 12 weeks. And so I kind of felt like we had until the inauguration. And then I was just going to, even if I was super bullish still, I was just going to go a bit more defensive. Would you subscribe to this? That we're going to, I mean, Raul has come out and said basically, look, it's not a local top. It's a local top, not the top. Yeah.
I agree. I actually agree with him completely on this. Like, I think global liquidity is very clearly a leading indicator for Bitcoin. We have to see if global liquidity keeps going lower or if it stabilizes around here. But separately to this, my thought was you have a big calendar effect happening right now with the holiday season and also the start of January when people are able to redeploy risk again. All of that, I think, to me, points towards like this big sort of like blow off top move higher sort of thing, where everyone just sort of like FOMOs in. And then I think people are obviously excited about the Trump presidency and his inauguration, but that to me just feels like a classic sort of like sell the news moment or local top type moment, because strategic Bitcoin reserve and all this kind of stuff, this is going to take like months to implement, right? Like, if not years. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, Loomis said could be 100 days, but I agree with you. I'm not as bullish on that big passing. I'm bullish on policy passing, but maybe not that.
Yeah. So to me, I agree with you. Like, whatever happens, even if things are like crazy bullish, I'm 100% de-risking in January. Potentially even, I don't think I'm going to de-risk in December unless things go really crazy, but 100% de-risking in January, regardless of what happens and what the market's like, because that's just that's just when I feel like we're going to have some sort of local top, and then we'll see what happens for the rest of 2025. I'm more uncertain about 2025 than other people. That's not to say I'm bearish, but I just think there's lots of unknowns that we don't know about. And so I kind of feel like I want to be a bit more defensively positioned in January.
Yeah. And I think you're starting to see just the start of frothiness, like Pump Fun having to ban live streams because, Zoomers are going on there and doing crazy stuff just to earn a few $1,000s. Justin Sun buying a piece of artwork for $6 million and then eating the banana. It just has those hallmarks of last cycle, like crypto bros showing a little bit of money, people coming FOMOing in here. I think I agree that I think this is more a local top than a medium than a cycle top. But I think with liquidity cooling down and the reality of a Trump presidency coming in, I think it's probably makes sense to go a little bit more defensive. But I also think that things can go really crazy for the next month. Like, how it is, like the 80-20 rule, 80% of the gains are made in the final 20% of a bull run. I don't think this is the full bull run, but I do think the end of a move often leads to the most parabolic outcome. So I think Bitcoin could go to 100K plus, like 110, 120 by early January. And then, yeah, I think I'm not bearish. I'm just saying that I think that's when I've just got to be in more majors than my current portfolio, which has been fully risk on since September.
Yeah, I think it's important to clarify, like, it's not necessarily being bearish, but I think people often confuse the act of selling or taking profits with having a negative view on the market, which is definitely not the case. I just think any trader or investor should have levels in mind where you would take profits and stick to them and take them regardless of if you think the market's going higher or not. You don't have to sell your entire position, but I think people, especially novice investors, often get stuck in this mindset where it's I'm really bullish, so I want to keep buying. I'm never going to sell until I turn bearish. But it's well, when you've turned bearish is probably when the market's already, changed and you've just kind of missed that point, or you've turned bearish too early, or whatever it is. Whereas if you just stick to okay, I think things can get here. When it gets to this level, I'm going to take some off. This level, I'm going to take some off. I think that's just a much better way to trade. And I personally have found I've done that this year, and I've sold stuff, and then it's gone a little bit higher the next day. Or I remember in 2021 when I sold stuff in February, and then we had that pump back up again in March. But then for the rest of the year, things went down again. I was man, I'm glad I sold and just stuck to that level. Because if you don't have any structure around your trading or investing, I just feel like it's inevitable you get yourself into some sort of hole by battling with your mindset the whole time. So,
yeah, the other thing I would also say is as prices go higher, they also tend to become a bit more volatile. So what you tend to find is that it will hit a certain price multiple times before. So you'll never really get that FOMO. Do you know what I mean? I know pretty much every single one of my positions will probably hit this price again, that it's currently at, no matter where it is, just because I think the volatility is high. So even if it's going up, it's going like that. Right. And I think that kind of helps you, that you don't get that FOMO, that it's always going to come back there. So if you're like, oh, I missed it, that's my general sense of it at this stage. I don't think Bitcoin's going to hit 100K and then never see 100K again. I think it's probably going to hit it a lot of times again. But so I think that's probably a good way to maybe put into perception. ETH to 5K, is that the real trade until year end?
Yeah, it could well be. It could well be ETH, maybe a little bit of ETH beta. I have a question for you. So in the meme coin world, Sol meme coins have obviously been all the range, etc. And Solana's been one of the strongest performing majors. if ETH does really well, do you think ETH meme coins come back? Um, Obviously, something like Pepe and Mog have all done well, independent of ETH's performance. But do you think some of that activity can come back onto Ethereum, or do you think it's just
No,
like
I
a
think that's a
Solana thing
UI
because of
UX thing, if I'm honest.
yeah,
I know Phantom added base, but I think people prefer Phantom to MetaMask, um, and they don't like paying the gas fees. So I think, and largely, like if you look at where the majority of things like Pepe are traded, it's on centralized exchanges. Um, so like Coinbase, you know,
yeah,
I think we could probably. I think it stays on Sol. I don't see people coming in and trading on ETH that much. Maybe base, but base has had a bit of a season right over the last week, which has been a very very interesting move. It's actually maybe a topic we can touch on a little bit here because
yeah.
there's been another base season. Whenever base activity increases, this is Coinbase's chain. It's always called base season, and the majority of that was around these AI agents, AI meme coins. It feels as though they've got that niche. You know, Base has got a bit of an AI niche. The meme coins have done okay there, but it feels like it's going to do well with AI agents, and it's done that. I just don't really know if people come back to ETH1 to trade anything but really Mog, right? That's the only one that isn't really listed for spot on many major exchanges. Or when was the last ETH meme you bought? Apart from, I guess REKT.
REKT, yeah. You are right. Like I haven't really, yeah. I think maybe one of the other memes that's done quite well on ETH is that Doge Department of Government
Those did
Efficiency.
well.
But
So I think it's just
They have a Solana pool, which I think is doing more volumes than the ETH token itself. So yeah, you are
wow.
right.
Really, is that?
Yeah,
So I think it's just a select few. That's the thing. I think it's like it'll always be that from now on, in my opinion. ETH for meme coins, the L1 at least. Like it will be if you're in that select few, it's really good, and if not, then it's really really tough. It's really really tough. So um, I think Mog obviously has had it, Pepe's had it, and then I think REKT has got an okay position to be one of the few that can maybe do it. But don't think many people would are buying ETH meme coins. They might buy them for ETH beta. That's the thing. That's the only other thing I can maybe think of. But I don't think it's going to be like thousands of traders come back to
yeah.
suddenly start trading on the L1.
One thing I would say is remember when the ETH ETF stuff came out? That's when Pepe just went up like 80% or
Yeah.
something like that. And that was like the bet. Like remember, the L2s didn't even move. It was like all just Pepe with ETH. So that's if we're looking at historical moves, that could be maybe an interesting one. So
Well, what if Solana gets an ETF? What happens then?
yeah,
That feels like the next ETF. But I agree. Like it, Pepe for me, Pepe is the one just because of the volume that it's doing on Coinbase. It feels like it can keep going.
that's on
Um,
Robinhood as well. So
yeah, you just can't discount it at the moment. It's just like uh an absolutely insane story that just keeps on getting stronger and stronger. Um, what I would say in terms of adoption this week, we have had a few bits and pieces which have been relatively strong. Um, three main ones, I would say. The first one is more headlines out of Trump. Obviously, hired Percent to be the Treasury Secretary, who's pro crypto. Also looking to appoint a crypto czar. It seems like. And we had Gensler looking like he's leaving in January, or say confirm he's leaving in January. It looks like the CFTC might take over a lot of crypto regulation. Um, then we had Brazil, similarly in this like game theory way, come out and say they want to do a Bitcoin reserve potentially, or a congressman in Brazil pitched that they want 18 billion, which is not small. And then finally, China or Hong Kong came out and said they would do zero taxes on family offices for crypto gains. It does feel like there's like a global FOMO going into crypto a little bit here. This is kind of also why I think we may detach a little bit from um, just the liquidity metric, like liquidity correlation, because people will just speculate on direct buying of crypto from these sort of things. Out of all of these, I mean, I do think the US is probably the biggest one. It still feels as though that turning on, just given the percentage of global financial markets that it dominates, it's it whatever you hear about from them is quite a big deal. It does feel like they're not just going to completely deregulate though. This ex CFTC chair, I mean, the CFTC does still regulate things, but I think it takes a little bit of pressure away from the coins themselves, the securities, and more focuses on the exchanges, particularly derivatives exchanges, so futures, perps, that sort of stuff, because the CFTC does regulate commodity derivatives. But all in all, I think all of those could be big. The one thing I really want to touch upon is this game theory stuff, though. OSF, are you back with us?
I'm back with you. Yep.
Do you think we're going to get a game theory whether the US passes this or not? Like, do you think if Brazil says, "Hey, we want to buy 18 billion of Bitcoin," Brazil's not a small economy, right? It's got to be in the top 10. Maybe it's smaller, but it's definitely up there. Do you think that then leads to a lot of other sovereign nations deciding that they should go down this route?
Yeah, I mean, the nation that has the strongest cards here is the US, as being the largest. It's probably the largest sovereign holder of Bitcoin, I think, because it's one of the top holders of Bitcoin in the world. All they need to do is just get people feeling like, oh shit, we have all these gold reserves, or we have all these like dollar reserves, and now some of these guys have Bitcoin reserves, and the US is now moving in on that. It will just make every single other sovereign nation feel like they need to own some, I think. And the UK owns a bunch of Bitcoin, and I think the UK is kind of a bit more pro crypto, just with like maybe some more refined regulation. The interesting one will be China, to see what they do as well. And they obviously have had massive dollar reserves, etc. in the past. But I just think this is going to be like we're going to be sitting here in the next few years, or possibly even sooner than that, with most sovereign nations just owning Bitcoin. Whether they believe it has value or not is another thing, but they're just going to have to, right? They're going to have. Yeah. It's just like people are going to be forced to own it. And I think the funniest thing is Germany selling all their Bitcoin at like 40K, and they're probably going to end up buying it back at like 3 or 5 times its value. I think that's going to go down as one of the most like comical moves in history, I think.
It was slightly higher. Remember, it was like 60K, I think. But yeah, it is still egg on their face to a large extent. It's not just them though. I think the other big one has been corporates, right? So MicroStrategy obviously is the playbook on this, and you've seen, I think, probably about 5 or 10 other companies around the world say, even in the last 2 weeks, they're going to add Bitcoin to their balance sheet, and every single time it's met with their stock rallying. I think the Rumble CEO came out and said he was going to do it. You have MetaPlanet in Japan that is, I think, borrowed another $65 million that they keep on buying Bitcoin. You had a firm out of China this week said they're going to buy $50 million Bitcoin. Like, that's the next FOMO, right? Underperforming business with cash. What can we do here? We're going to buy some Bitcoin. And it suddenly becomes this Bitcoin. I mean, that's kind of what MicroStrategy was as well, right? It suddenly becomes the corporate treasurer's dream. You become a hero because the stock price goes up because you decide not to just hold it in treasury bills.
Yeah, I think it's the writing's on the wall here. Like, I think it's gonna. You literally have the USA, people in the USA pushing a Bitcoin strategic reserve bill. So, if it doesn't get passed through this time around, I think it's something that will eventually get passed. It might kind of be a little bit like the ETF thing. I bet like the first time the Bitcoin ETF stuff came out a few years ago, it was this whole big thing, and then it didn't get passed. So it might take some time for it to happen, but I do think eventually it will happen. To be honest with you, like, if it's going to happen, this is the best environment for it to do so in terms of a regulation standpoint, and Gensler leaving and Trump in power. Like, you can't really have a much more conducive regulatory environment for this thing to happen. So compared to like for example, Bitcoin ETF in 2021, it was a different field then. So yeah, I think it's going to happen. I think the corporate thing is interesting because there's obviously like an extremely aggressive leverage strategy by MicroStrategy, and I don't know how many other corporates can do the same thing. But like Tesla owned Bitcoin and bought Bitcoin back in 2021 as well. I think there are probably a handful of other corporates that do, but I saw some like university and pension funds own Bitcoin through ETFs. Remember, you can just own it through the ETF now as well. So I think like it's a sort of asset that people will start to think and believe they should have on their balance sheet. I think just like every retail investor may now think, oh, I need to have like 1% allocation to crypto or 2% allocation to crypto, or 99% allocation to crypto, depending on what type of person you are.
It just feels like this global game of chicken, essentially, about who's going to buy Bitcoin. If it feels like it's starting to break down. That's basically what I'm saying. Like if everyone believed it wasn't valuable in, let's say, the establishment, then we're all okay. But then, particularly over the last few weeks, people are FOMOing in, and as soon as one starts to go and it starts to get that, oh wow, actually this is establishment, this is now being accepted, it can really start tumbling very, very quickly. I think the main one would be if we get some form of US policy around it. Maybe not like a full Bitcoin strategic reserve, but maybe a watered down one. And if you had one of, let's say, the top 20, one of the G20 came out and said, hey, we're going to add Bitcoin to our balance sheet, I think things could really start speeding up in terms of crypto. That being said, I think that's more of a medium term thing. I do still think that, we said what our short term view is probably until second week of January or first week of January. I think your inauguration is on the 20th, maybe. So around that sort of time. Maybe we'll get into more of the left curve stuff because that's what everyone is doing at this time. We have obviously had a bit of an altcoin cycle, an altcoin rally of the last week or so, and it's mainly been ETH beta, DeFi coins, some quieter L1s, let's say, things like XRP, Phantom, Algo. Meme coins, it still feels as though it's a bit of a transition. Like the two number one narratives in crypto right now, in terms of mind share, and you can see this in the stats, is AI and it's meme coins. And interestingly, AI is dominating meme coins at the moment. But the whole meme coin trading continues to see a bit of shift away from the Murad thesis to these more popular memes. I know you spend a lot of time in that sort of market. What are you looking at in terms of trends that you're looking to catch? Do you like the ones in terms of price range? What are you looking for the next 4 weeks of stuff that could outperform?
For me, I think there's two sorts of like price range buckets I'm looking at. I think if you're bullish on the overall meme coin market, the stuff that's within like the $500 million to $1 billion price range, I think that's the stuff you can put in a lot of capital in because they're sort of like now established means they're not just going to like rug tomorrow, for example. They can be very volatile, of course, and you can still have 50-60% drawdowns. But I think that bucket for me is like the stuff that I feel like could potentially 3 to 5x if things really like full send and we get this like great big blow off top sort of thing. So that I think is that bucket is where I feel like I can put in good size. What I would say about that bucket is I think I don't think the tier 1 exchange listings make a big dent at that level. Whereas if you look at coins in like the $50 to $100 million bucket and they then get a tier 1 exchange listing, I think that makes it very quick 5x and potentially even a 10x. So that's the other bucket I want to have some chips in. And obviously it's much more risky because there are way more coins and you have to be much more selective. But I think it's worth owning some stuff in that price range as well because inevitably you will see some exchanges come in and list that stuff. And for exchanges, if you list low market cap stuff, they can obviously go a lot higher and then it makes you look good as an exchange and it makes your listing desirable. Whereas if you list like $1 billion coin and then it drops to like 700 mil because everyone just dumps, people are like, oh well, that was, who cares about that listing? Like, it hasn't made a big impact. So I think we will see more listings in that sort of like 50 to 200 mil range, like we saw with Act, like we saw with Peanut when it happened. And I think that stuff will like 5 or 10x. But as I said, it's harder to pick things in that category. In terms of narratives, like you obviously had, the TikTok narrative has been the big one I think in the last couple of weeks with what happened with Chill Guy. There's been a couple more. And I think if we're entering this part of the cycle where it's like retail come back on and normies come back on and people are like shilling coins on TikTok, I think you want to pick coins that have the greatest like mass appeal. I think that's another reason why I haven't gotten that deep into the AI stuff, because I think AI is really good for people who are like intellectually inclined to think, oh, this is amazing, this is brilliant, that's quite cool. But I think the average person like listening to TikTok is not going to be like, oh, I'm going to jump in and buy this AI coin. They're more likely to be like, oh yeah, I love this Chill Guy meme. Like, can't believe I can like buy the coin and it goes up. Yeah, of course we're going to do that. Like, I think that casts a much wider net. And maybe the AI thing could end up being more of like a VC sort of thing or an institutional kind of thing, which isn't necessarily bearish. That could be bullish and go different ways. But I think I'm more in like the other camp of like just left curve, simple, mass appeal, jump onto it sort of thing.
I think the main risk with that, because I think that's now become all the rage, is that number one, there's very little moat. There's if you're appealing to mass people on TikTok, like there's a TikTok meme every single week.
Yep.
And secondly, what I would say is there's also, I think, less belief. I don't know how to describe that, but like people don't necessarily think they're like that it's more than just a fluffy animal, And I think one thing that the AI stuff has done, even if it's somewhat like I don't agree with a lot of it, it's like people really believe in this stuff that it can go to just billions, because it's a completely new sector, so to speak. So and in a bull cycle, like when that happens, there's no real price limit to it. Like no one's saying, hey, it'll stop out at this level. Whereas I feel like with even with the TikTok memes, right? Like if Peanut is the highest, people always look at that and go like, right, well, we've got to flip that. Whereas at this stage, like I feel like there hasn't been one which has been established for these more AI themed coins. There was like Tau beforehand, Tensor, which has actually had a decent week, but it's very different in style. So I feel as though with AI, people can have ridiculous levels, basically.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's fair. I think the nice thing about AI is obviously it's been a huge narrative in the last couple of years, and I think before you had these AI coins, which people found difficult to understand, whereas I think with the whole like AI agents acting as meme coins, and with Truth Terminal, it was something that was a bit easier to understand for like the layman. I think it's just a question of like how important people will continue to feel and find that. I think so.
So I think Andy may be doing an interview with Raoul soon. That's what I've heard.
Oh, that's cool.
That's coming up. So maybe Real Vision viewers or viewers of his individual YouTube will be able to see it. I do think he speaks very well. Andy is behind the GOAT coin, Andy Airy. And I do think we're going to see a bunch of different interviews from people who have come into this space now. There could be some normie kind of stories that way. But yeah, that I think maybe we'll linger a little bit on the AI stuff because it remains one of the strongest trends for the last week. It's number one for mindshare again, ahead of memes, and as a subset, this is really around AI agents. So it's coins which are attached either directly or indirectly to AI agents that have come into crypto and done different things. And I would break that down into 3 different sections. So you have AI agent memes, tokenized, let's say tokenized agents or tokenized LLMs, and then I would say infra plays. The original token here was GOAT, which is actually an AI agent meme. Like the AI agent was not related to crypto, came in, um, was created as an X account, got obsessed with this goat meme from 20 years ago, and then over the course of the next 6 months said, oh, the way to push this meme is by creating a meme coin. Somebody else created the meme coin, and then it adopted it. So it was like, it's still more about the meme, that one. There's a couple of others which have that sort of narrative.
What does like a real AI crypto coin look like? Like forget meme coins and all that kind of stuff, and just let's think about like actual utility or actual like real world applications and efficiencies. Like,
yeah,
how does that marriage look like?
so I think there's two different ways, and maybe the second batch, which is the tokenized LLMs. That's where you're starting to see the most experimentation around that. So some of that is like, some of them is they'll make content, and that the coin may not do anything there, but like Zero Bro, for example, made a rap album which got picked up and went quite big. You've had others which are, there's one this week which has hit $200 million, which is AIXBT, which is like making predictions about coins in the space. And that's become a very popular follow. And I think if you own the coin, you get access to like the Discord. So let's say like a gated Telegram version of an AI agent. I saw one this week that did sports bets, right? And you were able to see sports bets if you own the coin. So actually, I don't know what it looks like at this stage, but really, I think it will be, if you own the coin, you will get some sort of special access to this specifically trained AI model. That's how I can imagine those LLM coins work. Though, but that sort of utility stuff, we've seen how that can sometimes work. It's easily replicable. It can often be like medium term bearish, just because utility in this space kind of has diminishing returns and that sort of stuff. And I think with those LLMs, it's still a little bit difficult. I think the highest like pure LLM play is probably this Zero Bro token, which is at around 450-ish, and that like made the rap album and has been creating content and is very, very popular with like the TikTok generation, let's say. But the other way AI can work is kind of what Tao did. So, which is build a reward system for LLMs or for decentralized compute, essentially. So like, it will reward different subnets, essentially, based on the quality of, let's say, results that they do for different questions posed by the LLM, or different problems, I think, posed by the network. So it becomes almost like a Bitcoin model, where like it's a reward mechanism for the quality of the LLM. That's kind of how Tao is built. It's more like built for rewarding for training data. So then instead of it being some centralized closed-end way to like train these models, we have a big decentralized way to train them. Kind of, it very much fits in with the open source network, but like a better way to basically reward open source ways of improving these LLMs. That's how Tao is done. Others are more like deep in. So you actually decentralize you like rent out your GPU to a certain extent. There are things like Nasana which do that sort of stuff, because obviously these GPUs and a lot of the compute power is very, very difficult to get by. So like people can basically rent out that sort of power for these sort of LLMs, and that's how it can be built. So that's what the coins were like before these token, like these AI agents came in. And the third form, just going back to originally what I said, like third form of these AI agents is like the infrastructure play. So it's actually like the marketplace. There's huge parallels, I think, to NFTs here, genuinely, like huge parallels. I think Goat has got this kind of like CryptoPunks narrative. Then you have a bunch of like utility based coins coming in, like Zero Bro could be your Bored Apes, for example, or some AI XBT could be like Azuki. You know what I mean? They come in, they give you access to certain things, and then you actually have coins which are more like the OpenSea or the Blur. So there's like Virtual's protocol hit a 1.4 billion FDB this week. It's on base, and that's where you actually have to buy the agent using the Virtual token, and they make a few hundred of these agents a day. So like it's effectively like buying up the token supply, and that's been one of the best performers of the week. It moved into the top 100 coins. It's at 1.25 billion FDV right now. It's a much smaller current market cap, but still a big move. And then the other one is like of that on Solana is a coin called AI16Z, which has a slightly different model for the coin in that it's a DAO rather than a form of currency for the infrastructure. But they have a model called ELISA, which is trending on GitHub. Like it's the number one way to make these AI agents. And I think the vast majority, like 90% of all the bots being made are using this ELISA framework. So there's like various different ways to play it, and it's very unclear. Like I've said several times, I think the simplest way is GOAT, because I kind of see that as like the Doge of all these coins, or the crypto punks.
It's the main one. It was the first one and the main one that really caught fire, and there's always like
but it's also different.
It's forever value that. Yeah.
Whereas the others are a lot utility based, but the utility coins can run, right? Like Bored Apes went to 400 grand, Axie Infinity went to 40 billion. Like utility coins in a right point of a bull cycle can actually really, really run. So OpenSea at the top is worth multiple billions. So you're starting to already see those parallels, right? Like you've got the shovels plays, you've got the memes, and you've got the utility. And I actually think they can all go a lot higher. I actually think this is going to remain the strongest sector in crypto for a while, because I think the product market fit is there. I think it's one of the few places where like crypto needs AI to get to the scale that it needs to get to, in my opinion. And I think I don't necessarily think AI. I think AI needs crypto as well, but I think also it's really great to see AI researchers come in, like in their droves at the moment, and experiment here. Like there isn't a non-zero chance. There is a non-zero chance that AGI is created by one of these projects, because the incentives are there. Like they're all being paid, so they're all working unbelievably hard. I'm not saying like DeepMind and OpenAI and these other models aren't, but like there's also a ton of smart people suddenly in crypto meets AI, albeit they're like jailbreaking these LLMs and trying to get to the best model. But there's a lot more experimentation being done than I think people probably quite realize.
Well, look, I'm excited to see how it unfolds in 2025. I think with the agents and LLMs and memes, we saw kind of like more of a degen adoption into that space than we've seen so far this year. So I'm curious to see how it unfolds next year. Then we should move on to questions with the remaining few minutes. Before we do, we want to showcase some more pro content on Real Vision. Earlier this week, we had fellow chartist Benjamin Cowan on the show, someone I've been following for a long time now, since the beginning of my journey into crypto. He's put out some good analysis on ETH BTC, on Bitcoin dominance, and of course, if you watch that episode, there's discussion on Bitcoin dominance, altcoin season, and much more. So, would highly recommend checking this one out. Very relevant given the discussion we've had today, and he's, I think, one of the best at it, and has had very good calls this year and back in 2021 as well. So remember, it's on sale right now with Black Friday, realvision.com/BF24. Go get yourselves a discounted Real Vision Pro crypto subscription. And let's run through some questions with the last few minutes. First one, this was from Jonathan on the Real Vision website. Hi, Mando. If I got it right, your risk gone until year end, then reallocating to JLP, expecting downside early next year. Is JLP a hedge via liquidations, trading fees shared with holders, or are you missing something? What are the risks strategy?
I mean, JLP can still go down. Like if you bring up the JLP chart, there are periods where it goes down, but like generally in periods of the market going down, you get a lot more liquidations, and it's a perp. It's related to the perp fees, so that insulates any like big moves lower. Right now, it's making a 75% APY at the moment. It's very. I keep on looking at it and going like, it's very very tempting to just be like 75% APY on a basket of stables plus majors, where I still own 65% kind of a risky bag, let's say. That's tempting at all times. Like the Sharpe ratio of that thing, I've never seen anything like it in crypto, at least. So, like I said, I feel no worries in selling in December into that thing. But yeah, that is generally how it's worked. Like it earns fees both on the trading volume that goes into the pool plus liquidations, and the actual pool of assets is made up of 35% stables, 65% majors, of which the majority is Solana.
Yeah, I think it's the way I think about it is it's just a more defensive asset that has more caps downside, but generally has trended higher in upside markets. But in big moves higher, it will underperform the market. In big moves lower, it will outperform the market. That's the way I view it. So it's kind of like a defensive asset to own.
Raul's actually in our DMs saying that the show with Andy is going to be wild. So make sure you tune in for that one.
Okay, next question from Ralph on the Real Vision website. What causes divergences between spot and the futures market or futures-based ETFs?
I mean, various different things, if I'm honest. Yeah. Generally, demand for leverage is normally the main one. Also, things like interest rates, but the main thing is demand for leverage. So, if there's a futures premium, then generally people are risk on, and they're looking for leverage in the system. So they're actually separate products, right? Like, although there is that basis, like basis is a term which is ubiquitous in financial markets, because when you have derivatives, they're meant to trade where the spot trades, but sometimes they can trade different. And there's so many different reasons why they can trade at a different level. But generally in crypto, it's because people want to, they can lever up on derivatives.
Yeah, I agree. It's just like when people want to take more leverage. And you can see, like, if you look at the funding rates, that will also tell you that the direction in which that leverage is going. Like, if funding is crazy positive, people are putting on huge amounts of levered longs. If funding is negative, people are putting on huge levered shorts. But it's just the use of leverage, I think, that creates that basis, basically. JP on the Real Vision website, Mando, a lot of Mando questions out here today. Jesus. Mando, stick with that thought. What do you think happens to the price of Sol if it gets an ETF in Q1 of next year?
So I'm of the view that this isn't a cycle high, right? So I think it's just a local high. And I actually think you have a few different very bullish things that could probably start happening in Q2. Number one is the FTX repayments. That's the number one thing I'm looking at. So I think that's going to come in, and that's going to be another 20 billion odd. And I think people are going to start FOMOing, and of which I think Solana will be one of those. And I think after 6 months is when you probably start to see the majority of the crypto policy start to be spoken about. I don't think this is like day one stuff for him, for Trump. I think he's going to appoint people to help him. The VP, the crypto czar, the Treasury Secretary will help, but like I think it's probably going to be months afterwards. I think Q2 could be quite a big one. I think Solana could keep going. Like Solana, to me, on a pure metrics basis, looks unbelievably undervalued. Yep. Unbelievably undervalued to me versus ETH, and versus a lot of the other chains, even like versus XRP, which is kind of snapping at its heels. They're not even comparable. So and things like Cardano, Ton, like none of these things come even close to the stuff that's going on in Solana right now. So Solana is always one of these undervalued plays for me, even at 240. So I don't want to put a ceiling on it because it really could come for ETH, in my opinion. And I'm not of the view that we have this, as I've said so many times in this show, I'm not of the view that we're going to have this 80% drawdown sort of market. I think we could have a bull market which goes on for a while.
Yeah, just the only thing that worries me about Solana is the big unlocks in Q1 next year. But
right,
if you have an ETF and you have this FTX distribution, that obviously can potentially outweigh that. Next question from Layla on the Real Vision website. I've never bought an NFT just because I like it. I only bought the ones connected to the fund with Real Vision. I want to buy a REKT of yours. Is it best to pick one because you like the colors, style, etc., or is there something I should pay attention to regarding rarity? Honestly, my view, this is applicable to REKT, but applicable to all NFTs, is I think you should just buy something that you deem and feel to be aesthetically pleasing. I think people like Mando often get caught up with like, oh, let me pick the rarest ones without without paying attention. without paying attention to necessarily like the aesthetics of something. And I think if you look back through, if you look at Punks, for example, let's look at CryptoPunks, like the #1 NFT collection. Punks with hoodies trade at a massive premium, but they're not the rarest trait. It's actually a relatively common trait, but they trade at a huge premium to some of the other rarer traits, which might be like choker or a gold chain or a bucktooth or whatever. And that's because it's just a desirable, aesthetically pleasing trait, I think. So my opinion is like just find one that you think looks nice and that you feel like you vibe with or that appeals to you. And then you can't really go wrong, because then at least if the price goes down and you're like, oh, I'm stuck in this rare thing. I'm stuck in this thing that looks really ugly, but at least it's rare. I think you might feel much better with being like, I'm stuck in this thing that actually I like the look of and makes me happy, but whatever it is, what it is. That's just my advice, not just on rektguy, but on anything. All right, one more. I was going to say one more question, but I think it's more of a comment to us. Bitcoin, ETH, Sol, all down since the program started. Back on form, lads. That's from RM. Is
that from Arthur? Who's that from?
I don't know who that's from, but someone called RM. I don't know who that is, but yes, unfortunately, we may be the Friday curse may be back because everything has moved a bit lower. But hey, we're still up on the day. We're up in the last 24 hours, so I'll take that.
Bitcoin looks like a lower high, lads. It's over.
All right. Well, yeah, that brings us to a close. So thanks everyone once again for tuning in to REKT Vision. Before we go, as usual, we'll have a question for you. I think maybe even the same question as last week. When will Bitcoin hit 100K? We've been tantalizingly close many times now. We're once again just a couple of percentage points away. So leave your answer in the comment section. Let us know. Make sure you're following us on X. And one more time, please take advantage of the Black Friday sale on Real Vision. That's realvision.com/BF24. We won't be having a REKT Vision show next week, but you will see us as part of Real Vision's Festival of Learning, which will be available for free on the Real Vision website. But with that, everyone, I hope have a good weekend, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week, guys.